Hi everyone, Dean here from Enroll My, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Breakfast Club podcast. As many of you know, I'm always talking with people from the UK, Ireland, and around the world who've had an incredible impact on the lives of children, young people, and families. I'm keen to understand what drives them and the journey they've travelled to become the people they are today. In this episode, I sit down with Andy, the visionary behind Camp Glide. Andy shares how his experiences at Camp America shaped the unforgettable programs of Camp Glide and the journey to growing Camp Glide into what it is today. We look at some of the behind the scenes work and what it takes to scale a growing business. It's an insightful conversation about resilience, growth, and the passion for creating meaningful experiences for children, young people, and families. So grab your morning beverage, sit back, relax, and enjoy this inspiring chat with Andy. Let's go. Well, hey everyone. Great to have you join us again on the Breakfast Club podcast. I'm Dean and I'm here today with Andy from Camp Glide. How's it going, Andy?
Yeah, it's going really well, thank you. Yeah,
That's good. We just love having conversations with people doing great things in the community and serving parents and families and kids all around the place. And known Andy for a little while, probably about a year, maybe a bit longer.
Yeah,
than
a bit longer. Yeah, a year and a half.
18 months. So that's pretty crazy. And so Andy's the founder of Camp Glide. And so, like in our other podcasts and stuff, we love to chat through the journey on how people got to where they're at today. And I know a little bit of your journey, Andy, bit, but there's more to it, and definitely more to it in the American camp sector that I haven't heard.
Yep.
So that'd be cool, a bit of experience there as well, which I know many of us here in the UK, it's kind of, American camps are this kind of like this thing we all know about, but what are they exactly?
There's a lot of like films. What's it called? Wet Hot American Summer is a film, and it's a bit of a comedy. And if you ever worked out in the States, you'll probably relate at the camps. You'll probably relate to it, and it's my experience was quite closely aligned to all the shenanigans that were going on in that film. So.
Yeah. That's good because I think. This ethereal thing that happens, and so we'll get into chatting about that as well. But the cool thing to start off with, and we were just talking about this actually, is where do you grow up? How do you get started in things and just the life and those early years?
Yeah, so we're sat in Red Hill now, which is my hometown. I was just telling Dean I was born probably about half a mile away. My first house was probably a quarter mile away up the hill. So I've lived in and around here most of my life. I did some travelling when I was a bit younger. I had my first job as a paper round, but one of my first jobs after that was in wraparound care.
Cool.
So I worked at an after-school club whilst I was at studying college here, or sixth form. Just doing after-school clubs, and then I got a job at somewhere else, different, just doing UK holiday club play work. I went off to uni to do a business degree in Nottingham. I now run my own business, but I wouldn't really consider much of what I did for my business degree as of led me into running my own business. Maybe it did somehow, but that was a lot about corporates and things like that.
Did you end up living up in Nottingham as part of that?
I was there. I was in Nottingham for 3 years whilst I was studying.
Different to life in Red Hill?
Yes, different to life in Red Hill. Big student town. So when students were away in Nottingham, the population of Nottingham decreased by about a third because there's two huge universities up there. Whilst I was at uni, I needed some money, so again I just carried on doing those jobs in wraparound care. And then a friend of mine said that a previous summer he had been to the States to do American summer camps. He said he had a great time. He said, Andy, I guarantee you'll have a great time, you should go and do it. And so I did it. I applied. Back then it was like really easy for English people to get a job out there. I think it's a lot more competitive now these days. But the whole idea is for these childcare camps, sleepaway camps in the States to get, rather than Americans going out to see the world, it's the world comes to America. I did that for 4 years. The first summer I was just like a regular camp
How long was it for? Like, so you'd go over for like the whole summer period?
Yeah, so I'd go over sort of end of May, beginning of June, and I'd be back. So camp would start sort of mid-June and end in sort of mid to late August. But you know, they had some programs before and after, and I had some travelling time. So yeah, I'd be out there from like May until maybe October or something like that.
And did you find your experience, you know, the kind of around wraparound and camps and that in the UK translated to the summer camps over there?
Definitely relating to the kids was something to they're very transferable. I found the kids in the States, they're a lot more optimistic and energetic and enthusiastic, and kids over here, I think sometimes, you know, I don't mind a pinch of cynicism, but sometimes it's like, oh, that sucks or whatever. But everything you do with the kids in the States, they're just like very much into it.
100% into it.
I think that's just part of their ethos and culture, and probably also the type of kids you get at camp. And the energy the counsellors provide out there.
Did you do that during university years as well, or?
So I finished a year of university. I would head straight out to the States. I missed my own graduation actually because I wanted to be out in the States. And then I came back. Did that for a few years, and then I got a job as I was working in a ski resort doing childcare as well.
Oh wow! You get to ski as well on that one?
Not as much as the hospitality staff. They were like morning and afternoon, and the childcare staff were like during the day. But you know, it worked out you do half days. So so half a day I'd be skiing and half a day I'd be looking after the kids. So I did like summers out in the States, winters out in the Alps or at university. And then...
Man, that sounds like the life.
It was, until all my visas ran out. So all my visas sort of ran out, you know, I was sort of being pressured by some people to sort of get a move on with my life. I had a short stint as a sports development officer for a local authority, getting mostly kids or people that sort of don't normally get involved in sport, trying to get them into sport. And then after that, I went for a regional manager role at a nationwide holiday club provider, which I think the process was quite competitive, as I remember, and it got down to the last two, and it was me and this other guy. He was a bit older, had a bit more experience, and I don't blame the provider. They went with him. And it was that moment I thought, I could do this myself.
Totally.
So I got the Ofsted registration. I found a venue. I managed to somehow scrabble together a small staff team. And that's where we went.
That's how you started off. And with the sports stuff, was sports a big thing when you were growing up as well? I
played a lot of football. I played a lot of sports growing up as well. We do sports at Camp Glide, but we call ourselves a jack of all trades, master of none. So we want kids to come to Camp Glide. We want them to try new things, make new friends. You know, that sort of. That's the sort of experience we strive for.
And that's the journey through to the very... And how old were you then when you started the Camp Glide journey?
23.
23, wow.
So 12 years ago. The company's, 11 years old. But just the whole idea of it came just before that. So,
And the name from the US experience and stuff.
I wanted it. So definitely we brought a load of stuff over. We wanted the enthusiasm, the energy of the US summer camp experience. We know the market in the UK is not built for sleepaway camps. So it's day camps only. The name came from, first of all, I wanted it to be called Camp Something. And then actually, I think the first one was going to be called Flash Camps, but then there was some connotations around flashing. That so that name was nixed. It was basically SEO. would someone type in, and the only search result on the search platforms, Google, etc., would be us. And so I wanted it to be like an aspirational word, etc. And like Glide just came up. And it felt right, and we just went.
It is a really cool name, eh? Like it just rolls off the tongue really well, and it's funny how you choose names early on, and sometimes you put a bit of thought of them, sometimes you don't, but over time they become what they are, and you kind of grow to love them, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I'd go through phases where we don't like the name, and then we like it, and then we don't like it, and then after a while it's like, it is what it is, and everyone just moves on.
And we've definitely, because so that was just a holiday club, and then now we branched a long time ago now into breakfast and after school clubs, so the whole wraparound care thing, and Camp Glide didn't really sort of go well into the wraparound care, so we had an identity which we still kind of use a little bit, called Rangers, before and after school club, but we've kind of with Camp Glide now,
just it's worked and it's rolled.
It's worked,
that's cool. And what particularly, you talked about like the enthusiasm of the kids and all that kind of stuff in the US, was there any other bits around the activities or how things are run and stuff that kind of stuck out to you, think, those are things that we could use in those times?
So we would do all camp activities almost every day, and the camp I worked at, when it was at its busiest, was like 600 kids. And so there would be 600 kids running around 500 acres, so it was a huge site. Doing these
one kid per acre. Potential for loss, quite like.
Tracking kids, would be, occasionally, a kid would go missing. No one ever sort of went missing forever. But they had a whole process of like locating kids if they went missing. But on this huge site, but we did these things called all camps every day, and they were like very well developed, very come to life activities. One's called Gold Rush, where the kids had to go out all across these 500 acres and find sort of gold, silver and bronze, and there were bad guys hiding out there trying to steal their gold, silver and bronze and things like that. One's called Predator and Prey, and so they're going around the woods being predators and prey and things like that. And so we brought a lot of those what I call big ticket activities over, because back in the day, not saying at every provider, but it would just be like parachute games or dodgeball or this activity, arts and crafts, and they're these really imaginative activities where the kids would come to life in it, and get wrapped up into the whole thing. We brought over from there, and they've gone down really well. I think that's part of the success.
And that's the experience, I suppose. The experience of as a kid playing in one of those games, and how cool it was, and the great vibes it created, kind of thing. So bringing that across, new fresh games, new fresh experiences, that was kind of part of that foundational ethos of Camp Glide kind of thing.
I mean, and we'd always try and time those big ticket activities right at just before the kids go home as well. We've been doing this and this morning. Most of the time the kids really enjoyed it. A couple of times maybe it wasn't quite right for some of the kids, and they maybe didn't enjoy it so much. But we did this big ticket activity right at the end of the day. We'd send the kids home with a big smile on their face. They'd go home buzzing, talking about, we played a military game of hide and seek called Commando, trying to hide from an evil colonel, etc. And that would be the thing that would go home and tell their parents about it.
Because the classic, what do you do today, kids? Oh, nothing. But like, what do you do today? Fire out, we played this hunt game and it was like awesome. Do
you want to come back tomorrow? Yes.
Can't wait to get back. That's cool, because I remember reading one of my formative books, and it was based out of a guy who worked in Bromley by Bow before it got all done up back in the day, and ready for the Olympics in 2012. And he was saying, if you ask kids, Social Entrepreneur is the name of this book. He ended up on Tony Blair's advisory committee, which is another interesting story. But he said, if you just ask kids what they want to do, they're only ever going to tell you what they know. And it's the same, like, so you're preparing activities for whatever you want to do. You're only pulling out of a resource that you know. And so when you came to that situation, you had this resource of knowing that was on the other side of the pond, and so you could bring that across.
And an audience that didn't yet know it.
Totally. And that created the new and awesome experiences. That's cool. And I think that's
that whole kind of bringing in of new things and innovative ideas and things. I think that's something that really stuck out to us. When we first met you back in the day, it was like, oh wow, you're doing all this stuff a little bit differently, and it was really cool. I think back to my school teaching days, because I often relate, as many listeners know, back to when I was a school teacher. We used to do folk dancing, and every year you'd teach the same 3 folk dancing songs because it was the only ones you knew.
Yeah.
So we didn't have the internet. This is a few years before YouTube, just for people's. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to learn these other dances because there's bound to be a good one here, And so I went out to the school community. I said, oh, does anyone know any of these dances? And sure enough, a couple of these old ladies rolled in and said they knew some of the dances. So they taught me through the whole book, and I was like, okay, these 4 are epic. We're going to do these 4,
Yeah.
And no one had ever done them in the history of the school because everyone just did the same 3 dances all the time,
Yeah.
So that's cool.
I bet the kids loved it, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, yeah. I still remember the first day we performed it for the school. We did this thing because it was all tunneling under, and working through, and if you got it wrong, it failed spectacularly.
Yeah.
But the kids loved it, and the school loved it, and it was it's just something, that newness, and keeping that freshness and that newness gets harder as things progress.
Yeah.
So it's a real mindset, which is in your name basically.
Yeah.
From that thinking. So. Oh, that's cool. And then so obviously you got started. You brought in some of these new ideas. You got a school you talked to. You're young, enthusiastic, and all those things. And then there's a very big difference between getting started at that level and then where you are now, and that growth through that process from there. How did you start going about getting the next school and then the next school and camp and,
I mean, it's about marketing it right and to the right people as well.
Yeah.
And obviously you want parents to be sending their kids to you. And I was outside of schools myself in a Camp Glide T-shirt delivering flyers.
Yeah.
For better or worse, we don't do too much of that now.
Yeah.
We built a good name for ourselves. We got a lot of parents to sort of advocate for us. We'd try and make sure we knew who the parent governors were, things like that.
Yeah.
And then so what actually happened is I got a job with the school to run their breakfast and after school club after I ran that first holiday club. They had a vacancy and they were doing it in-house at the time.
Yeah.
And so I did that for just over a year. Really honed my skills on the breakfast and after school club management side of things.
Yeah.
And then there were some schools locally tendering for the service, which I did, and I sort of went to the school I was operating at and said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to do it privately, therefore here's my resignation.
Yeah.
And they turned around and basically said, Andy, if we think you're doing a good job, would you consider doing it at this school privately?
Yeah.
And so that's probably the best thing I ever did, was handing my resignation. Because what actually happened, I ended up getting both schools. And so I instantly had 2 breakfast and after school clubs and this holiday club, and we have this hub and spoke model for our holiday club. So we do the wraparound that a bunch of local schools, and then we point them centrally to a holiday club. And then we went from there. We bought a small provider, a one setting provider out that was quite successful, long-standing, had a whole bunch of kids, but the person that ran it wanted to sort of withdraw, so that was a great foot in the door for us. And then just word of mouth through school teachers and governors and us push. I mean, we try and push ourselves, but it's mostly through recommendation from schools. So
and I think it's an industry where like Andy and I caught up earlier, we were talking about the importance of reputation and the importance of doing a good job, because the schools know about it and the parents know about it. And if you're doing a great job, then the schools will talk to one another and the parents will talk to one another. And there's no shortcut to that. You mentioned earlier the early days, the flyers out the front. It's funny, when people get started, I was like, did you design your own flyers, or did you go get someone to design flyers?
No, I did. So I had a friend of mine design the logo, and then our first flyer, it's on our Facebook page, actually. You can probably go back and try and find it. It's literally Arial font, 30, size 30, black and yellow, and very rudimentary. And now we have tools like Canva and other design tools that we use. So, Yeah, it was very rudimentary back in the day.
I think everyone starts there, starts with those initial, kind of mocked up flyers the best you can with the tools you've got in the day.
Yeah.
Which is cool. You mentioned too the hub and spoke model. So that's I suppose a unique thing, and one of the things it does is it means that your holiday camps are really large, and the activities, as you've spoken about, the kind of fresh and new activities, you actually kind of do those at scale. On those days. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you manage the holiday camp in that large scale situation kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, before we would get 100 plus, maybe 150 plus kids sometimes at one of our venues, and we would just have them in 2 halls, and it was absolute bedlam. We'd have enough staff, we'd be doing the activities and stuff, but at certain times of day. Yeah, so doing the holiday clubs at scale, the activities at scale, as I said, previously we would have 100, 150 plus kids in these 2 halls, and it was bedlam. We'd have enough staff, but at certain times of day, what I would call transition times, so after lunch or tidy up times, or going home times, or entering times, it would just be absolute chaos because there wasn't much structure around that. And then COVID happened, and we had to do bubbles, or we call them pods. And there were smaller groups that would be completely separate, so there would be no sort of crossover between any of them. And now we've come back from COVID, and we still run this. We run a hybrid system, so we have pods. Where children sort of go in and out into smaller groups. The adults are much more accountable to those specific children. But they all come together during the day to do all camps. We run workshops where they can pick and choose what they want to do. And then, so that's how we work it now. We have lots. It does require a lot of staff. We're probably a little staff heavy sometimes. We have managers and floats sort of trying to be the grease for the wheels to make the days go by. So that's how we do it.
And I think that's one thing that maybe parents and to some extent schools don't really see behind the scenes, and what it takes to make a day flow, well, and everything just to seamlessly happen, and kids to be in the right place at the right time, and all those kind of things. It's not a.
It's funny, back in the day, and maybe still occasionally, I get a parent ask me, Andy, what do you do during the middle of the day? You do breakfast club, and then there's after school club. What do you do in the middle? It's we run this business. We have a HR department. We have accounts. We have bookings and payments. We have customer service. We have marketing. We have planning. We have so much to do. But but I just sit at home and twiddle my thumbs.
Watch daytime TV. Or something. No, absolutely. And all I think that's from an industry perspective, that's where that success comes from, isn't it? It's that planning elements, it's the operations, it's making sure you're thinking the next holidays or the holidays after that ahead all the time. You can't just rock up to a holiday going, what are we going to do now?
Absolutely.
That would be a rookie mistake for and people who get started may not even realise that. Like you say, there's people might run setting, and they're used to just having a holiday, and they just turn up and they just do activities with the kids without much planning. But when it comes to scale, when you're starting to really scale and running multiple things, that planning piece is massive.
And you need to have proper processes and policies in place that people are going to follow. Because if you're not there to oversee it, then people don't know what they're doing. Absolutely. And so obviously Camp Glide's rocking along awesome now. I think we missed a trick somewhere along our discussion, because when you were in America, did you meet important people? I certainly met influential people. I met my wife out there as well.
That's where I was going.
Oh, sorry, but she's very influential in my life.
Absolutely.
So my wife, I met my wife out in the States. We had a long romance on and off due to distance. But she's here in the UK now. Has been for just as she moved over to pre-COVID. And we now have a 5-month-old son together.
Awesome. So soon to be an attendee of wraparound care in a few years' time.
As well as some nieces and nephews, I'm sure.
And how have you, I suppose, as things have grown, your family and the business and all that kind of stuff? How have you managed that kind of that tension, the push and pull of business and family life and things like that?
Yeah, you're definitely pulled in different directions, and like before, you know, I mean, you might relate to this. You didn't really appreciate how much free time you had. I am like always doing something, whether it's work or whether it's home life or other parts of my life. I just never seem to have a free moment anymore. But yeah, no, got lots of good people in place. Got a good central team in place. A lot of which we were just playing some darts with just not so long ago. And they make it a lot easier. It's finding those good people, keeping those good people that keep the ship going. And help steer the ship and sail it in the right direction.
And you've managed to retain some good people for a good period of time. What do you put that down to? What's your thinking there?
Do you know what? It's certainly not money. I mean, you know, we can offer some level of salary. It's competitive in the industry, but unfortunately the industry we're in isn't an industry that commands high salaries. But we have a very nice atmosphere in our team, in our office. You know, it's not at all corporate. It's not at all. You know, we've got some people that actively sort of stick around because they enjoy spending time with their colleagues during the day. And they get paycheck at the end of it as well. So
and it makes a difference, like, you know, just that good vibe in the workplace and things, you know. Because you know, for those of us listening that are involved in childcare, you realise it takes a lot of energy to do that job, and at the end of the day, looking after kids, you can be. It can be very tiring. But it's so having the camaraderie with your with staff is massively important.
Absolutely.
In that place, even in after school, you know, by the time you get wraparound care after school, you're, you know, 6 o'clock rolls around, you're knackered. So So that's cool. So what's the future for Kent Glide? What's next?
So, you know, there's been some other. I've keep my eye on the market and the childcare industry, and see what's going well and where things are moving. And we definitely want to be growing. We want to be doing so in a sustainable way, mostly organically growing. Because, you know, whilst we're quite compact in a geographical area at the minute, but we are across Croydon, Surrey and West Sussex. So we'd like to expand expand within that, but also a little bit outside of that as well. We don't want to fall into any of the traps of like overextending yourself. And then having to overpromise and underdeliver. Because I think, back to reputation, I think that would be a big mistake. But, you know, there's some opportunities coming up. There's a national wraparound funding that's sort of being rolled out at the minute. We've got our eye on a few opportunities where that might make the difference between us, it being a barrier that we can't overcome to get something new started, to it being something that we can overcome. We've got some different areas of, you know, business areas that we want to develop in terms of recruitment and training, and seeing how we can maybe work that to our advantage, both from a recruitment perspective, but also and a training development perspective, but also a financial perspective. There's other sort of selling points that we want to develop within the company as well. But whilst I do have kind of like my 5-year plan in place, it's constantly evolving, so I have to go back and tweak it.
How do you find, you know, speaking like you're thinking of the future, you're now in more of a strategic role. Though the reality is, for all of us that even when we get into these kind of roles, you end up jumping back in every now and to serve and things like that, because that's part of the nature of it. But how do you find that transition from, you know, getting started to which is very hands-on, through to today, which we still have to do the hands-on, but it's more the strategic thinking and the operational thinking that's kind of front of mind.
So I mean, the journey is a difficult one, and like, you move from being with the kids, which is what I went into it for. You know, I still spend a small amount of time with the kids. I sometimes go in as the judge in one of these big ticket activities, and we have a bit of courtroom drama. But then you go into sort of more management of people, and I know we spoke over lunch. I could write a book about some staffing situations. I think working with adults is the best and worst part of what you do. And but the strategic stuff, then you move on. So you go into like this middle manager position where you're managing lots and lots of people, and then thankfully I now have a small team where I have somebody to do a lot of that managing for the company, and I work with them and the central team on more of the strategic stuff, which again is what it's different to working with the kids, but it's more of my cup of tea sort of thing.
Are you pulling on some of the old university stuff?
Like
bit of business stuff from back in the day.
I don't know how. Definitely on the marketing side, yes. And sort of putting in those logistic corporate structures maybe a little bit, but it's mostly common sense. You mostly find a challenge and it's problem solving it until you fix that problem, and then that becomes the structure of what the company is doing.
I mean,
So maybe pulling a little bit on it, but
it's funny. It's just like there's nothing like doing, because you start moving in a direction, and suddenly all these all the squeaks start coming, and you need to sort them out as you go. And I think the really interesting. You spoke about not taking not overreaching into new sites, new venues, new settings, and the biggest thing I see across the board is not the biggest thing, but one area I've recognised is operational overreach, where people overreach their operational capability in trying to start something new. And if they take that step and they don't have the operational capability in place, then it suddenly becomes a burden on everything, and the standard of everything comes down. And
you end up trying to keep your head above water. And so suddenly what should have been 10% more effort is now 50% more effort, and it all just kind of flusters a little bit. And I'm not just talking about working with children here, just in general business at all. The thing of the operational overreach is really massive, and so it's great talking to people like Andy who kind of understand that and go, okay, we're taking a considered approach to this. I mean, we talk about risk with children, and my approach to that is we do manage risks, and I'm probably far less risky with what we do with the children than what we do with the business. But again, with the business, it's all about that managed risk level. Well, if you don't risk something in business, you don't get the reward for it. It's
that management of it is the key. Cool. Oh no, that's awesome, and I think having known a little bit of the background of Camp Glide, it's good to hear a little bit more of it, and particularly the US side of things, because I think that's really opens your eyes to something new and something cool that kids can experience, and then bringing that here as well. So that's been awesome. Any final words, Andy, for the listeners on some gems of gold or anything?
I don't know. We like to think we're like a reliable provider. I've definitely seen people fall into the traps of they've started something but they didn't get the numbers on one day, so they cancelled it last minute because it wasn't going to be worth their while. But then you become that unreliable provider. So that's something we really focus on. We do lose money in certain areas of the business, but we take that long-term approach that it's eventually going to come good. And if it doesn't, obviously we're willing to sort of cut areas loose. But
it's not on the spot. I think what you're talking about is a considered approach to that kind of thing. You're not firing up events and then cancelling them before they start because there's not the numbers there. You're saying, well, okay, we gave this a good crack and we pushed it for a good period of time, and look, that one's not going to work. Which is cool as well. So lots of wisdom, and so thanks, Andy, and thanks for joining us on the Breakfast Club podcast, and sharing the wisdom, and I think there's some really key bits to take from that, and I'll after I have a listen, I'll put them together and put them in a nice little summary and for you to check and go from there. But thanks to everyone listening, and thanks to Andy for joining us today.
Cool, thanks guys, thanks Dean.
Cool. Cheers.